We're from the Conwy Valley branch of the North Wales Wildlife Trust, who is bringing you this talk, and invited George, and he's thankfully said yes, he would do this talk. Known George for quite a few years, and he's given a talk in our hall, which I think Miriam mentioned just a few minutes ago. I think this is going to be same sort of subject, but a lot more material. I think it's going to be a lot more material and a lot more interesting as well. Not quite the same, not being in person, but Zoom is all we can do at the moment. Without further ado, I've known George a long time. He knows all about these bees. He's going to tell you so much interesting stuff. And I can't say any more than that, really. So I'm going to hand over to you now, George. Off you go.
That's fine. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Right. So can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, I presume they can. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine, George. Yeah, it's great.
Right. Okay. Hello, everyone. And yeah, nice to talk to people, really, isn't it? After all this blinking plague-like times we've had. My red mason bees have just recently started to emerge from their nests, so which is quite nice. But it's been so cold. This talk is about attracting solitary cavity nesters. Although I do have ground nesting bees here and bumblebees, I do different talks as well. So have a look at my website. If I don't manage to answer your question now, if you email me, I will get back to you and answer your questions. So yeah, so I'm quite proud of this product that I designed, but you'll see it later on, and you'll see why I designed it and everything else. So much ado. This is a bit different from my last job, which was as a police officer for 18 years, and I was medically retired. And what you do when you're 45 years old and you got 3 kids, you go to university, and I did a master's degree in countryside management, and my thesis was on slug pellets and predatory beetles. So you know where I'm coming from. So instead of chasing burglars now, I'm chasing bees, which is much easier, but they still sting you. So here we go. This is my garden. 1986, I decided to become an organic and wildlife gardener. And that picture on the screen there now was, I got rid of my lawn and I got a wildflower meadow. Looks beautiful there, but it does change every year. So let's get on with a little presentation. Many years ago, when I was in the police, we used to have to go out. If we had someone robbed something or something, we had to go and grab someone who matched the identity of the suspect. So this is just a cling back to those days. So this is for an ID parade. So I'm suspecting most of you know these reasons why bees are in decline. I won't be touching on all of these. I'll just be touching on a few of them. It's from a film called The Usual Suspects. So we used to go out and offer someone a £5 if they'd stand in an ID parade. Okay, so here are just snippets of information. You'll be thankful to know I don't like doing graphs, so I do little movies. This is what I'll be touching on: nest sites, forage, nesting material, and chemical free. The massive effect that chemicals have, especially these neonicotinoids, on bees. So please, if you're going to attract bees to your garden, don't use any chemicals. So these wild bees, these solitary bees, because they don't produce honey, a lot of people say to me, oh, well, what good are they?
Female red mason bees. And there's some male red mason bees here. Now the males are just interested in mating with the females, and the females are just interested in getting a cavity before they all go. You'll see the males going in these holes here because inside there are cocoons, and the cocoons will still have females that haven't emerged yet. I wanted to show you how harmless these bees are. Red mason bees, completely harmless, no problem at all. You can see them flying around me now. They're not interested in me whatsoever. This is George Pilkington, Nurturing Nature Limited. Thank you.
Yeah, so I do get a bit miffed when people say to me, well, if they don't produce honey, what good are they? And and Well, that gets me going really, but hey, these bees don't sting you and they're very placid. My wife didn't like bees, but now this is her. She would have run a mile away, but this is a male on top of a, he's actually doing a pre-copulation display, actually. He's not mating with her. There's no sex on Zoom, So yeah, so that was just to overcome her fear of bees. Yeah, I'll skip that one because it's too long a story. They're so important, these bees, but I can't do my little dance, so I'm not going to carry on with that little thing there. But briefly, you'll see those plants on the left are pollinated by those bees on the right, and those birds on the right eat those berries. The main difference between honeybees and solitary bees is solitary bees are pollen driven, whereas honeybees are nectar driven. So each one of those cavities is one female. So you can see, and that was one of my boxes, you can see how that's two sides. You can see how busy they've been and how many plants they pollinate. So this is a fact. 600 solitary bees do the same work as 30,000 honeybees. There's lots of reasons why, but I haven't got the time to tell you it all now. But that's where that is from. These are the bees that will use a nest box. Some of them will just use it to sleep in, but some of them will use it to nest in. So there's quite a lot of bees that will use solitary bee nest boxes. I don't call them bee hotels. They're not bee hotels. The bee they live in there for 8-9 months or more. So that's not a hotel. I call them, a lot of them, bee cemeteries. So that was the Latin. So I'll skip that one. Right. This is this is a film of 25 flowers that solitary bees will use. So that was buttercup, and then there's strawberry. Being an ex-copper, I like to get evidence, not read a book and then copy what someone else has put. So this is evidence that they pollinate these plants. That's a hairy-footed flower bee. It's not a bumblebee. That's a female, but they can quite easily be mistaken. Allow parsnips to seed. Toad flax. Orange hawkbit. I mean, there are loads more flowers. It's just finding the time to video it all. Jacob's ladder. I love this plant. It's used by birds, bees, butterflies, moths, forget-me-nots and alliums. Hedgerow cranes will. That's a yellow-faced bee, that small 5 millimeters bird's foot trefoil. These are all in a garden, these. Bolter's mauve, what a top plant that is. That's much better than buddleia. It attracts so many bees, butterflies, moths. Foxglove, there's not that many bees use foxglove, but you still plant it. Mountain knapweed. That's a bumblebee and a solitary bee there, leaf cutter. Black knapweed. That can be a bit of a thug in the garden, actually. It can take over. Obviously, species of lavender. Small scabious, or lots of other scabiouses. These are just ones I have in the garden. Devil's bit scabious. I don't know whether I've planted that one, but that's a cracking plant. Ornamental poppy. Leastris. When you go to the garden centre, though, and you buy these plants, and they might have on it pollinator friendly, it depends where they're from, because a lot of these plants are full of these things called neonicotinoids, which affects the bee's brain, and they can't. It makes them go a bit loopy, to be honest with you, and they may get lost. It affects their breeding. So please make sure they haven't got neonicotinoids. So I know Jan Miller, who's listening, she won't be using them. So if you're in the North Wales area, it's worth going to Jan's place. Right, so let's look at, this is the most common solitary bee, certainly in my garden. The female is about a third larger than the male, who's on the top there. The female, they're called Osmia bicornis because she has two little horns on her face, which she uses to manipulate the mud that they make their cavities from. So this is a red mason bee life cycle. He starts off with cocoons, which look a bit like coffee beans, I suppose. And this is a male. It can take chewing out of its cocoon. This can take 3 hours or more. It's such a time expenditure that they spend trying to chew. A lot of them don't even make it, actually. Because then after that, they've got to chew through the mud wall inside the cavity, and that's a big job as well. There he goes. So do you notice they've got like a moustache? And then they have a quick poop. That's getting rid of all the waste material he's accumulated whilst he's been in the cavity as a larvae and a pupa. And he gets a quick tan. Quick drink. So the males emerge first, and then they go looking out for females. So this will be happening pretty soon. In my garden, the females aren't out yet. And the males have only just started to look. They ambush the females as they come out. There's a female bottom right there, and the male will pounce on, and then he gets pounced on. That's male on male, so they can try as much as they like, but they won't get very far. This is a Bombus pascorum. There's a male red mason bee. He sees something that looks similar to a red mason bee female, and he'll try and mate with her, and he realizes, oh no, she's not. So these have all mounted. This is a pre-copulation display. And this is the actual pre-copulation display. A lot of energy goes into producing that buzzing sound. And she's just weighing him up, his weight and his strength and everything, before she lets him mate with her. They need mud, the females, to make their nests. So if you don't have mud in your garden, moist soil, constantly moist, they won't nest. That's the egg on the left. That's nectar she's regurgitating, and she turns around and deposits the nectar on top of it, which is used as a glue to hold the egg in place. This one's going to lay an egg now. It's like a little rice grain, really. There it goes. I've waited ages and ages and ages to film that. There's the female, get the cavity, and then she defends it. And these are fighting over this. One's trying to steal a cavity, the other, and then they're joined by another one, and they're pushing and shoving. And there's only one owner there. So these are all individual females. They don't work together. They're solitary. Then they seal up. Once they've finished their egg laying, they'll seal up, and they may go on and carry on and do some more nests. That the frass is the bee poo, basically. This one's now going to spin a cocoon. Once they've eaten the pollen, they spin a cocoon, and then that's late summer, and then they will stay in that cocoon right through until April or May for the females the following year. They were white to start off with. So which is the way out? Out of it's all black inside. And the females fashion the exits on the inside. On one side, the inside is smooth, but the external way is rough. So the bee finds its way and chew its way out. So it can't get a grip on the smooth side. That's what one's concave and one's convex, because if they start going the wrong way, they're going to go further and further into the nest instead of out to the exit. So even the bees, they make the nests like that. So they need three things, red mason bees: mud, forage, and a nest site. Now they won't go more than 250 meters, 300 foraging, and they need all of that. They need those three things within that 300-meter area. If they have a good nest site and good forage, but no mud, they won't nest. So I provide the mud actually as well in a tray, and I keep it constantly wet, which you'll see shortly. And there's a lot of mud used as well. So she's finished her nest and she's now sealing the outside of it with mud as an anti-predatory trait. And then she'll go off and she may do another one. She may be too tired or too old. They don't live very long, a few weeks or so. So you see on the right, I've got stones. And then if you put that inverted volcano in the mud, and then prod it like that, put holes in it, pour water onto the stones, and the water is underneath the mud and it keeps it constantly moist. If it dries out, they can't use it. So now that's only a few feet from their nest, because every time they leave the nest to forage for pollen, nectar, or mud, that's when the predators and pests and parasites nip in, lay their egg and nip out. So I provide the mud to keep that time away from the nest short. So this is she's just grooming herself. She's just appears so disinterested. There's not much she can do really. If she doesn't want to mate with him, it's difficult. She can't drag him off. If you notice, this one's got her back leg and she's trying to push that male off because she's already mated, because they only mate once. And then they keep on getting mithered by the males. Yeah, so this is the pre-copulation display you saw earlier. This is it, yeah. So what she's doing here, she's measuring his strength, how forceful he is with those thrusts, how often he pauses, how often he carries on. It's a fitness test for him. So hopefully, after spending all this time, this can take, I have videoed one male doing this over various periods for 3 hours. 3 hours. Then he'd have a rest, carry on. 3 hours. I had to keep on nipping out, going in for a brew and then coming out again, you know. 3 hours they were there doing this. So if he didn't mate with her, he would be well miffed because he spent so much time and energy, and he may not ever get the chance again to mate. So now what he's doing here, he's touching her antennae and he's releasing a pheromone, you know, like lynx. Come on, you know, mate with me, you know, I'm fit enough to have it. So he's releasing this pheromone, which he hopes she will find attractive. That's like doing press ups, that, you know, it's so energy expenditure is very high on that. 3 hours, as I say. Yeah, so there he's touching their antennae. That's trying to calm her down, to reassure her that he's fit for purpose. Nice moustache he's got there as well. But not all bees, not all solitary bees do this. Like the wool carder bees, they just go in and mate straight away. They just hijack the female. There's the inside the nest. You see the curves, concave and convex, and the exit is to the right. So if a bee starts to go the other way, so that's why the inside on the is smooth, but the on the left is smooth, and the inside on the right hand curve is rough, so the bees can get a grip of it, so they know that's the way out, as they use the mandibles to chew the way out. This is I think this has got to be one of my favorite bees. This is a wool carder male, and boy, he reminds me of a samurai warrior. Such a beauty. He was so big, this guy, and they are real bullies. Anything that, and what happens is they find a suitable patch of wildflower or flowers, and they patrol it and they protect it, and they chase off butterflies, bumblebees, and other solitary bees. But because the males don't sting, look how big he is. The males don't sting, but they have this like 5 spikes there on the bottom of his abdomen. So he'll grab hold of a bee and hug it and spike him with those spikes. Now, that's a male bumblebee. Bump. Chases it because he's in his territory. So that poor male bumblebee, it's a garden bumblebee. Early bumblebee, sorry. He couldn't fly after that, and he climbs up into that plant, and he still was attacking him. That one couldn't fly at all. So this is his patch. That's what it is. It's a battlefield. So when a female enters there, the male will mate with her. Now, I noticed if other males went into that area, he chased them off, banged into them. So what this particular male did, he had all them toad flax and all the pots around it. But the smaller bees went into my meadow, which was to the left of that. This is a piece of bark on a string, and he'd come and inspect it. Look at that. And then he realizes it's not a butterfly or a bee. He's given it a good check out, though. So the smaller males would then, instead of getting battered by this male all the time, they moved off into the meadow. And because he was so busy protecting that area, 1 or 2 of them did mate with some females, much to his annoyance, no doubt. That's a leafcutter bee. Look at that. He just attacks them straight away. And he just patrol this area all the time, and they constantly chases them out, even the hoverflies and blue bottle, anything at all. $11 o'clock. So he's mating with that one, yeah. So he's the emperor of that little patch. But then he started to extend it, and he started to cover my bigger wildflower meadow. Well, that was just too much for him to patrol all the time. There's a female, and even when there's no romance at all, she's feeding and he's checking it out, bang. So oh. Yeah, it was, I mean, it was something to look forward to get up in the morning and wait for him to appear and see what antics he was going to come up with next. I'll move on now. This is a blue mason bee. So you got your red mason bee, but the blue mason bee is a lot smaller. That's a male, and they use plant material to make their nests, masticated plant material. And like other males, once they find a suitable nest site, they will patrol it and look for females, and they rest inside it on windy days or too hot days or whatever. This one, I just found this. So lucky, I saw that there in my wall, and the next year I found her emerging. You know, the chances of being there when she did that was just, you know, a one-off really. But I'm lucky I have an office right next to my garden, which is great. Just nip out. So this is another, this is this toad flax, common toad. It does spread out, but it's a nice plant. And to save time, like lots of other bees, it has its tongue, or she has her tongue extended to stop it flapping it around. She got attacked by a male then. See that? The males get battered by each other, especially the red mason bees and these. So that was a male in front of this nest here. This is a female, obviously made that nest. You can see the masticated plant material, and there's the larvae eating the pollen. And there's a bit of nectar in there as well. There's mainly pollen. I don't get so many of these bees in as the red mason bee. This one's ready to start spinning its cocoon now. And that brown stuff is frass. It's known as frass. So it expels all of that. They all do this. They expel it because they don't want it inside their gut when they're sleeping over the winter, which is what they do. They don't hibernate as such. So these are leafcutter bees. And this is what they do to your plants, which I don't mind. So when I was in Liverpool, I taught lots of kids in Liverpool, and the kids call these the cigar bees because they made cigars. I thought that was great, that. The med masons they called mud bees, and the Osmia leana they called the pesto bees because the masticated plant material looked like pesto. So this bee is making their nest. They chew the leaves together and they form, as you can see here, inside the cavity, they line it with leaves. Then they separate it with other leaves like that. So you can see the little tips there like that. That's why they're called leafcutter bees. So that's a leafcutter bee larvae. And you can see there's a lot more nectar in that than there is in the red mason bee. This is it spinning its cocoon inside a leaf cell. And that's what they look like when they're a larvae, big fat larvae. So you can see the little individual cells there. So this one, this is that's my bee box on the right. And when I was doing some gardening, I noticed this pink thing shoot past me. I thought, oh my goodness, what's that? So I waited and waited and waited. And eventually I got it on film, and you'll see. So they don't only just use leaves, they're called leaf cutters, but you'll see. Yeah. So I paid this one to do that for me, a flying petal. So look at that. I mean, how cool is that? See, so she made it out of pink petals. And that just brown up, but I just thought it was a nice little change from leaves. There they are, they've gone a bit brown now. So as I said, there's a lot more liquid in those cells than there is on the red mason bee. This is the pesto bee, Osmia leaiana. I get a few of these in the garden, but you can see the cells a lot smaller. There's the egg on the right than a red mason bee. That's the egg there. That's what I'm going in there. So they take a long, you know, I mean, it's a lot of energy to chew all this plant material up and then go and make a nest out of it. There's the cocoon there. The larvae spinning its cocoon. That goes brown over the period of time. So female solitary bees, they get mithered by the males, even though they've started a nest. So as you can see here, and as you saw earlier on, it'd be great if she could advertise the fact that she's got a nest to show the males she's already mated. Because what happens is when they find a suitable pollen forage, if they keep on getting mithered by males, it chases them away from them, and it can also damage and injure them. It chases them away from that forage, and they go to a lesser quality forage. So why not advertise the fact, hey, look, I've got pollen on my abdomen. So that means I'm mated and I'm making a nest. So it's not worth bothering with me. So she advertises this fact by doing that. So look at that. So that's a clear sign that, hey, I've got pollen on my it's called a scopa. So don't bother with me. And it worked. Besides solitary bees, you can get solitary wasps inside your bee hotel, if you want to call it a bee hotel, yeah, inside your nest box. So I designed this to fit inside. It's called a summer unit. And so I'm now going to look at some cavity. So I hope that brought a smile to your face. So, you know, you often see these types of things in nature reserves and goodness knows what. And yeah, okay, it makes use of pallets, but they've not given any thought what is it that they've made it for? You know, is it all those creatures on the outside, and they can all have access to this? So if it's purely for bees, well, forget it. You won't stand a chance. Ants, squirrels, spiders, all kinds of things there. So, I mean, I've used these ones in the past. The problem is, you see, they've got a bumblebee on this bee box, bee nest, and so bumblebees don't use them, and beehives are for honeybees. So no wonder people are confused. I call this the Mersey tunnels. There's no way a red mason bee is going to fill the back of them tunnels before she can even make her nest. So it's got to be blocked at one end, and the wind will just blow. It's going to take her weeks and weeks and weeks to do that, and she just hasn't got that time. And these are all different things I picked up from various scientific papers. And I mean, so that's just going to encourage more males. They're not deep enough, and don't waste your money. How are the bees going to get into these things here to nest? Just useless. Again, injure the wings, damage the wings, just forget them. See all them shards and everything. What's this for? And the metal around there can damage bees' wings. So you shouldn't be using metal. Use plastic, you know, it's not going to damage the wings. But what's that for? How would you clean these? And the one on the right, all those cracks and splits and everything, that's no good for the solitary bees. Even though they might have been filled. What use is it? Pests and predators can get in those cracks. And is anything alive in those, behind those cells that are sealed anyway? So I did think I found a good one to view the bees, and I was made up when I got this many years ago. And you can see the bees, and they lay their eggs and everything. However, a lot of them went moldy and the bees died. So I would burn a lot. So here's a typical nest for cavity bee nesters, which no doubt a lot of you are familiar with, but what's going on behind it? So we'll have a look. So a lot of them are full of pests. The coffee beans that look like coffee beans, they're red mason bee cells, but they could have parasitoid wasps inside them. And the M is for mites and the C is for Cacoindennis indicator. It's the Houdini fly, which will come up. And so those bees are dead. In those they're all dead except for the ones that still, you know, the brown coffee beans, but there could be parasitoid wasps in them anyway. So this is the mites I'm on about. That's a male, and they transfer off the male onto the female. And so these are equipped for going hitchhiking with those little claws, and they jump on the bee's body, and the bee will fly off and mate. They don't land on flowers and wait for a bee to come. They just don't do that. They're not equipped to live outside on a flower head in the vain hope of catching a solitary bee. How are they going to scramble on it? What are they going to live off? But they breed like Billio. They can have 10 cycles within one bee cell. And then there's some on there, and when there's too many of them, and they will kill the bee egg. And when you get over 40 of them, 40 or 50, I forget now exactly, from a scientific paper. They suck the juices out of the egg, and they breed and breed and breed and breed and eat all the pollen. And then some of them on the right, the immobiles, and then the mobiles. The immobiles can stay in there for up to 3 seasons. And the mobiles, they're the ones that stay alive, active, and hitch a lift onto a bee. The immobiles, they don't know what wakes them up. Is it the smell of larvae, the pollen movements within the cell? I don't know, what something wakes them up. It's an insurance policy, because if all those mobiles don't succeed in mating and getting another cell to go to, the immobiles wait and wait and wait and wait. And then when a bee comes in, they wake up. So how many of them are inside your bee hotels? So as soon as the bee starts chewing its way out of the cocoon, they will jump onto its back, cling to it, and wherever the bee goes, they will go. And then when the transfer during the mating, as I said before, some of them are burying themselves in that, entangling themselves into that, the nipple end, and they can move between cracks inside the nest, like that one. So they get out from one cell. So if it's unhospitable in one cell, they will move to another cell. So sometimes the infestation of these mites is so heavy, the bees can't fly and they fall to the ground. So here's the Houdini fly. It just looks like a fruit fly, and it's called a Houdini fly for a reason, which you will see. So it's just a fly, this thing, and it flies into the nest when the female is out, lays an egg, and then runs back out and waits again. So they just hang around the nest site. And sometimes when you get 5 or more, generally, the bee dies because they compete with the bee larva for the pollen resource. So I wanted to know how they escaped, because once they've turned into a fly, how do they get out of that mud wall? Because they haven't got mandibles to chew the way out, and they don't have moisture to wet the mud to get out. So they have another very clever way. So these are fully formed, fully winged adults. They won't get out. They might get out of that one there. What happens is they move. If you look at the weakest point is where the mud joins the wood, and they actually wear it away, the mud grains, bit by bit. But these won't get out. I can tell you that for nothing. They might get out of that cell, which they do, but they won't be able to get out of the other cells. And that one got stuck there. They're too old to get out. You can tell them, you see the blood red eyes. And that's how they get out. This one is, no, there's no wings on it yet. It's very nimble, soft, wingless, and it uses its head to expand and force its way along. And that's how they get out. So when you get a few of them doing that on that mud, using their head as a pneumatic drill in a way, it wears away the mud grains, and that's how they get out. But one of these, if I can't remember if it was this particular one, but one of them, when I was filming, it took 40 minutes to get from one cell to another cell. 40 minutes, and once it collapsed into the cell, because obviously that's far too long, and it just expended all its energy. And for the next 3 days, it was inside the cell and it just kept blowing its head up and closing its head and blowing its head up, and eventually died. What time is it? Yep. So I'll just show you, I think I'll just show you this one. I've got several videos of parasitoid wasps, which are enemies of these things. That's one there. They always do this preening when they're successfully found a nest. They prepare themselves, they clean themselves. They have this zigzag flight. They use their antennae. I've got admiration for these parasitoids. The thing that the tools that they use to find their hosts is phenomenal. So you can see, I've learned how to manage these things now, but to make this video, I had to let them in. Oh, that was a big mistake. They killed hundreds of my bees. So you can see here now of a nice ovipositing through the mud into the cocoon like this. So she's got an ovipositor sheath, and then in that the sheath is behind, and look at this, look how flexible that ovipositor is. And she finds a little crack and she's maneuvering it around and bending it and everything. And then when she gets to the cocoon, she cuts through it basically with that. She's got like a little tip on there, cuts through it, and then she stings the larvae and lays her eggs inside the cocoon itself, and they latch themselves onto the larvae and then they eat it. So she's actually egg laying now inside the bee cocoon on top of the poor bee larvae. And then you can get loads of these inside one cell. They're the larvae, they've eaten the bee. That's it alive, basically, yeah. And the thing about these wasps is they're the pupa there. You can see the ovipositors, see the sheaths there. If they don't mate, they will lay male eggs. So this reminds me of Cops and Robbers. Quick, there's no one there, let's get out. They chew their way out of the cocoon. Oh, there's no one here. Have a quick peep. And they will run riot in a bee nest. And they can, as I said, if they don't mate, they will just lay male eggs. And depending on the temperature, if it's warm, the first generation can come out after 2 or 3 weeks or so, and as I say, run riot in your bee box, which is what they did in mine when I did this film. The lengths I had to go to get rid of these, you wouldn't believe. So I won't be making this film again, I can tell you. So their whole raison d'etre is just to mate, or not even mate really. It's just to pass on their DNA. As I said, they don't even need to mate. They can just oviposit inside your cocoons and lay male unfertilized eggs. I mean, look at them there. Okay. Right. So this wasp attacks leafcutter bees, so I'll skip through that. This one here attacks all of these. That's a male. Man, this is those big antennae he uses as clubs, and it's actually a battlefield inside the cocoon. They look like antler horns, really. And if you ever seen the film called Highlander, there can be only one. The first male to emerge from the cocoon will actively seek out any other male that looks like he's emerging and kill him. So there can be only one. They're tiny wings he has, but he's completely flightless. He stays in and around the cocoon. As soon as any females emerge, though, the males give up on the fighting and try and mate. So this is the good. I've done all the ugly and the bad, and this is my one, the one I designed. Courtesy of my daughter asked me what was happening inside the bee boxes I used to have, and she didn't know. So I've had 15 species of bee, 16 now, by the way, but use it. So I'll just give you a quick shot of them. All of these videos are on my website as well, nurturing-nature.co.uk. Yeah. So this is hairy-footed flower bee, but she was only sleeping in there. Some of them will just use your nest box to sleep in, to rest in, and some will use it to nest in. They make their nests out of resin, obviously the name. He's just resting in there. So some of these aren't from my garden. Some of them are from Kew Gardens and various other places, because I ask people to send me videos and I will use them with their permission. This is the wood carver bee. She's quite big, actually. And that's why she's called that, because she chews away and she'll evict other nests. So she'll take over a nest and evict the others' cells out, and the leaves and the larvae and everything. So there's lots of bees that use cavity nest boxes, but most probably a lot of people won't know them. That's a female. Osmia Leetiana. Ah, yeah, the wool card. This is a female. This is they're called wool carders because they actually, I'm going to do a full video on this because I've got the material now. I've got lots of material. It takes hours to make these films. This one I got off John. I forgot his name in the moment, but yeah. This one you don't need to provide materials for. She makes her own nest with saliva. It looks like cellophane. And that's a very fluid nest. There's no pollen in it. Well, I've got a life cycle shortly of that bee. This one here I was really pleased to get. That's a cuckoo bee, sharp-tailed cuckoo bee. And they nip in, lay their egg and nip out. And there's the mandibles of their larvae, which kills the bee larvae and then consumes the forage. That's the summer unit. Yeah, this is one. This is a good. Yeah. Yeah, the first bit of that was from John Walters. Recommend his site. He's got some great videos on there. Yeah, so that you can see the egg there, and it's stuck onto the wall of the nectar. So this particular bee eats nectar and mixes it with pollen, and then regurgitates it and makes a waterproof cell. And the larvae actually sort of swims on that wall of nectar. Now, you may never have seen this. This is gasteruption jaculator entering a bee nest, and she didn't know that the common chases her out. Yeah. Yeah. These are called Echium blue bedders. And without them, I don't think these bees would be as successful in my garden. So I'm waiting for Jan to grow them for me and I'll be picking them up sometime. It blows bubbles like that to get rid of the water. You know, we used to do bubble gum years ago, didn't we? Well, blow big bubbles. Well, she's regurgitating the nectar to evaporate the water, ready for the larvae to eat, drink, mix it with pollen. And then she uses a gland called the Duffer gland to seal off the nest, but lots of predators could just chew through that. But so this bee is only 5 millimeters, 5 millimeters. Really, really pleased to get this in the garden. It took me 3 years to develop that summer unit to get it right. Yeah, she started in this, but she died. Now they're like this. Now they remain like that right through, and they are just now starting to change to a pre-pupa. And you can see them, the bodies forms from a larvae to a young bee. You can see it as it develops. Like that, look. You can see the head and the eye and the abdomen and the thorax just starting to move a little bit. They're nearly at that stage now, but not quite. So the bodies are getting darker now. See, a lot of this goes on in your garden, but you've got no idea, you see, because you can't see what's going on. So they're starting to exit there. You can see they just chew their way out. There they go. and going to start making a nest shortly. Yeah. Yeah, see, so these ones were unlucky because they hadn't emerged yet, and I think some of the bee had started a nest in front of it. So I had to give them a hand, yeah. All right, so this is one I'm really proud of. That's Gasteroption jaculator. So that's, these are only a minor pest, really. So it's just sussing out a nest site now. I used to think that these went for red masons, but they don't. It's the common yellow that they go for. Backing its way in, backing its way in. Long, massive ovipositor.
Karen.
And you see how flexible the tip is. It just goes straight through that cellophane type thing. And now watch, there's the egg coming out. So the larvae stick, or the egg is stuck to the wall there, and then the larvae chew their way through the wall and then chew their way through and eat everything that's there. And the cannibalistic as well. So that one obviously didn't know that that was there, and this went on for over 40 minutes, that chasing it out. So I'll skip that. There's loads of other solitary wasps that I can show you, but I'll skip that one. So here is a leaf-cutter bee cell in front of red mason bees. So those red mason bees will have to chew their way through those leaf-cutter bees, and that is a wasp on the top of the clay that attacks, parasitizes spiders. And there's the little one, little Passiolis solitary wasp. Now, this is in one of my summer units. So this one here, it's actually taking out aphids that another wasp had put in. And I thought, why is it doing? And then I caught some as they were dropping. And then this is what they do. They make their own nests. She wanted fresh material. I don't know why she didn't use them, but and they make a resin nest and stock it full of aphids. So that is the end of my little talk.
Well, thank you. Wow. Thank you, George. That's, I think you probably introduced a lot of people to a whole new world of nature there, I think.
Yeah, hopefully.
I mean, I guess a lot of us might see, and I'm not speaking for myself and Jill, the red mason bee was introduced us to solitary bees, if you like.
Yeah.
And we've got a couple of your boxes which work well for the red masons, and thankfully I think you sent me a summer unit last year, which actually did actually attract a lot of those bees you just described there. The yellow-faced bee.
Oh, right, good.
Sharp-tailed bee, and probably others too, and I can't think what they are. But there's so many to wow. I think I'm gonna have to watch that all again. I think. I think most people are, and maybe go along to your website. Jill's put the link to your website.
All right, thanks.
In the chat if anybody wants to see that. And I'll send an email to people anyway afterwards and reiterate that, as well as kind of send your email address. But are you happy to ask if people want?
Yeah.
I know you're limited for time a little bit, but if anybody wants to kind of put their video on and put their hand up if they wish to ask a question verbally, I've got some in the chat.
People are asking where they can source the nest boxes.
Okay.
I'll ask that question answer that first. Yes.
Right. Oh man. Well, COVID and Brexit has massively affected supplies. There's no cardboard for cardboard boxes, and I'm awaiting timbers. before I make my next batch. It's that's what I say now. I'll get my old age pension. They're thinking, God, is it worth it? You know, but hey, yeah, nurturing nature. That's what, if they email me, I can reserve the next batch that I'm going to make for some people if they want it, but they'll have to email me to let me know.
Okay.
www.nurturing-nature.co.uk. Yeah.
It's in the chat. Jill's put you up that link in the chat, which you should be able to get to straight away.
I think people were inspired to see your box, George.
Oh, right, so good, yeah. Well, I designed it because it's somebody told me, they said it's a game changer. It's broken the mold of beekeeping, wild beekeeping, but not only that, it's the instructions you get, whether it's a 14-page booklet based on science and, you know, practical experience. So yeah, so it's not just the box that they get, it's the management of them and everything as well, and the bees, as you know.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's an education, and it is.
Yeah.
And it is, and that I've shown it to my grandchildren, and they've fascinated by it as well, and they can see the developments over the season.
Yeah, good.
So that is, yep. Sorry. There's a technical question here. I'm going back a little bit to the chat.
Yeah.
Gary, I don't know whether Gary wants to show himself, but I can read his question out if not. If the first egg in the nest is the oldest and the subsequent then sealed in by later younger eggs, how do they know, or what triggers the order to exit, given the last laid and youngest will be nearest to the exit? I'm guessing the first laid has to wait for all the others in front. So it's kind of, how do they know what to do?
Okay, so the first is the oldest, but the female will hopefully be, depending on the length of the cavity, she'll lay females first. Females require more food and more space in the cell, and then what happens is they get older. The bees, the mothers, the females get older, and as they get older, they haven't got the time and energy then, so they then switch off from producing females to produce males. Males are smaller and don't require as much room nor as much forage, so they're on the outermost cells, where the females are on the innermost cells. So the males emerge first. There's a video on my website of what happens. So the youngest male, the oldest male, he wakes up first, chews his way out the cocoon, chews his way through the mud, and then he nips the backside of the other one in front, and then say, come on, get along, boots him up the backside. And then that one then wakes up, and the one behind has to wait for him to chew his way out of his cell and his mud cell, and he does the same to the other. So it works like that. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, depending on temperatures, the females do it in the same order.
So they've got it sorted, but they've been doing it for a long time, haven't they?
Yeah, it's temperature dependent actually as well. Yeah. And
like I said, well, that's because now the males are flying, aren't they? But the females probably won't come out until the weather improves slightly.
It's warmer. It's got to be a lot warmer for them. Yeah, the females.
Yeah. Okay. Is anybody? I've got a lot of great comments here saying, "Wow, fantastic kind of videos." And they are fantastic videos. I mean, they must take a heck of a lot of patience to kind of get those videos.
Oh, I have to plan them and everything. Yeah.
But yeah, remarkable presentation. There's a few. Jan Miller's put a few links to her website for buying stuff like the Echium blue bedders.
You better save me some, Jan.
Absolutely. Good. Excellent.
How do we clean nesting sites? Susan and Horace are asking.
Yeah.
And when?
Oh wow. Right. Do you mean my box or the other box? I don't know. See, I only deal with the other ones you can't clean, a lot of them.
Oh, exactly.
Which is why I designed that, so you can clean it.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can really get at the actual kind of groove, can't you?
Yes,
and
exactly. Yeah.
Push it out and even boiling water on it or something like that if necessary to kind of get.
To keep it clean. Yeah. You know, because a lot of these things you can't clean, or you have to crack them open, or bamboo things. I'm trying to steer people away from them type of things. and get something half decent. Well, decent, not half decent, decent. Yeah.
Fair enough.
It's a management, you see. If you don't manage your bees, like anything, you can manage the numbers, and the numbers grow up, but that'll attract more pests and parasites.
This is true. This is true. This is true. Then I'm just checking on Jill's laptop whether there's anybody.
No.
No, and there aren't anybody. Just a lot of great comments. Thanks, John.
All right.
Maybe. I mean, you said you got lots of other videos and stuff about for other bees. Well, I know the wool count. We have the wool count.
Yeah.
Maybe we can kind of look at those maybe later, possibly if you're interested in kind of doing another talk later, maybe
Possibly, yeah. Well, I might be able to come and do one.
Physically.
Yeah, that's much better.
Not find that just yet, actually, to be honest. But there you go. We'll see. Well, if everyone's happy, and what we'll do is, to everyone else, I will send an email out with a link to your recording, and I will send.
Joyce and Ernie
Oh,
are
there is
asking a
this.
question
Oh,
about.
Oh, hands up! I thought they were waving. Someone waving back.
Now.
Go on, Joyce. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unmute
Joyce,
yourself. Unmute, Joyce.
Right, yes.
Yeah, got it. Yeah.
Thank you for your talk.
Lovely.
How do we know which plants to avoid in garden centres?
Oh, that's it. Well, right. Well, firstly, ask them where they get them from, and ask them whether they've used neonicotinoids. And once you start asking questions like that, I've done it loads of times, and they look at me as if I've got two heads, because half of them have never heard of it. So you have to go to. I deal with people who don't use neonicotinoids. Or about organic plants.
What is the use of, was it neonicotinoids?
Oh man,
Why are they used?
that's oh god, blimey! Why do farmers use chemicals to kill things? That's why they're called pesticides.
Right.
They use to kill pests, and it's actually a coating that they put onto seeds, so it's systemic, so it goes through the root, the shoot, and the fruit, and anything that sucks, nibbles, gets it, and they're designed to kill chemicals, pests.
It's aphids, isn't it? Yeah, aphids. I think it's aphids mostly. The aphids.
It'll kill any.
And anything else too that might, yeah.
Yeah, on bees they have sublethal effects. So it's not, the chemicals aren't going to say, oops, sorry, I'm not going to work on you. You're a bee. It's just anything that comes into contact with it, eats it, sucks it, chews it, will get it. And if it's big enough, it'll have a sublethal effect, which means it affects its fertility, its breeding, its homing instincts, all kinds of things.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, George.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Right, if there's no more questions, I got all it remains to do now is to kind of thank you, George.
Oh, that's a pleasure, mate.
Thank you so much, and I know you got it. And you're a busy man.
Yeah, busy.
Thank you so much. I think, like I say, I'll
That's okay. Yeah.
It's on that YouTube. If everybody's, I'm just double, triple checking, and I'm going to say just to give you a good send off. I'm going to, if anybody wants to unmute themselves,
You can email me if you want.
I'll send. If you unmute themselves, even show their faces very briefly, they can give George a round of applause and a good send off and a thank you. And
Thank you.
Thank you, George.
thank you all for coming. Thank you all. Maybe see you next time. Thanks again.